Hello everyone. When filing taxes, you carefully follow every step, but the instructions feel vague. Each attempt to resolve issues, whether through confusing online resources or endless calls, only leads you further from an answer, layering complexity onto what should be simple. Filing taxes soon becomes a maze, full of forms, rules, and no clear way out. You feel trapped, lost, and powerless. This familiar, unsettling experience captures the essence of a term you've probably heard before, Kafkaesque. The term describes feelings of helplessness, absurdity, and alienation in the face of faceless authority. To experience the Kafkaesque is to be trapped in a system that defies logic and control, where each attempt to escape only deepens the entrapment. It speaks to our own fears of losing control and feeling overwhelmed by forces we neither understand nor can resist. It's an adjective so powerful it has entered nearly every language, and behind it stands just one man, Franz Kafka. Today I'll try to touch on this Kafkaesque struggle. Despite Kafka's modest output, his exploration of human vulnerability in the face of bureaucratic and societal forces continues to resonate worldwide, even in today's hyper-connected, information-saturated society. His influence reaches far beyond literature, permeating our culture and psyche. But why has Kafka's legacy endured? As Slavoj Žižek once said, the purpose of philosophy is to ask the right questions. Some writers, like Kafka or Dostoevsky, go further by confronting the heart of these questions, forcing us to face uncomfortable truths about control, freedom, and human vulnerability. Through their work, we encounter a philosophy that doesn't merely ask questions, but immerses us in the existential struggles these questions uncover. Kafka doesn't offer escapism or simple resolutions. Instead, he confronts us with raw experiences that reflect our own. His work remains relevant because it taps into something deeply human, the feeling of being lost, judged, or misunderstood in a world that seems both complex and indifferent. This is why Kafka resonates so strongly in an era where individuals feel increasingly entangled in the overwhelming systems of technology, government, and global media. Just as Kafka's characters often find themselves ensnared in inescapable systems, we too experience the crushing pressure of constant judgment and evaluation, from our careers to our online lives. Kafka's connection to these themes wasn't merely a literary construct, but an extension of his own life. Growing up as a German-speaking Jew in a Czech-majority society within the Austro-Hungarian Empire, he was raised amid cultural conflict and tension, never fully belonging to any single group. His father, Hermann Kafka, a successful businessman, had a domineering presence, fostering a relationship marked by Kafka's profound sense of inadequacy. Throughout his life, Kafka wrestled with questions of identity, insecurity, and his complex relationship with his father, all of which deeply influenced his writing. Though he held a stable day job as an insurance clerk, he felt compelled to write, crafting worlds where characters confront relentless, incomprehensible systems that defy logic. Kafka famously wrote a letter to his father, which he never sent, expressing feelings of inadequacy, failure, and oppression. "My writing was all about you," he told him, suggesting that his father's harsh judgments became a template for Kafka's reflections on power, judgment, and control. 100 years after his death, Kafka fever remains as potent as ever. People still find their own experiences reflected in his stories, especially as societal expectations, bureaucratic systems, and digital surveillance create new labyrinths of control. The sensation of being ensnared in systems that operate beyond personal agency and the inability to alter one's circumstances are familiar realities today. In a Kafkaesque world, choices become irrelevant as one is subjected to arbitrary judgments. Kafka's stories, therefore, provide a language to articulate modern anxieties around feeling lost, inadequate, or overwhelmed. Kafka once wrote in his 1914 diary, "I am becoming increasingly incapable of thinking, observing, making observations, remembering, speaking, taking part in the lives of others. I am petrifying. This realization I am forced to make. My incapacity even extends to work. If I do not take refuge in work, I am lost. I know this as clearly as the reality itself. If I hide or flee from people, it is not to live in peace, but to annihilate myself in peace." And indeed, 100 years later, Kafka still seems to live with us. This is the portrait of a man who is petrifying, who feels deserted by questions, who experiences himself as a desert of questions, but who perseveres in his work as others persevere in life. A man for whom work resembles his only escape. Kafka led an enigmatic life that translated directly into his fiction, constructing a universe where individuals feel crushed by incomprehensible authorities, as if by forces they can't control. His enigmatic stories resonate across generations and geographies, reminding readers of the disorientation in our increasingly complex world. The experience of Kafkaesque absurdity, with its dizzying lack of logic and insurmountable obstacles, continues to feel hauntingly real to readers who recognize these bureaucratic nightmares in daily life. The genius of Kafka's stories lies not simply in their surreal predicaments, but in their ability to serve as mirrors reflecting our own existential struggles. Through his characters, Kafka speaks to that part of us that feels perpetually lost in the fog of modern life, seeking meaning in the face of its own absence. Franz Kafka provides a language to articulate the modern anxieties of feeling lost. He offers no easy answers, only the haunting familiarity of the Kafkaesque, a feeling that is as uncomfortable as it is deeply human. In an era where people feel increasingly detached from systems that govern their lives, Kafka remains more than just a literary icon. He is a voice echoing from a century ago, capturing the essence of our collective disorientation. The simplicity of Kafka's language, tinged with empty emotions, belies the complexity of his themes. While his stories may appear direct, the worlds they depict are fogged with ambiguity and imprecision, leaving readers grappling for meaning. Kafka's characters are often nameless or identified by only an initial, adding to their everyman quality and universal relatability. Readers, like Kafka's characters, are thrust into these distorted realities without clear explanations or moral conclusions. Kafka forces us to confront the unknowable, pushing us into corners where we must question not only the nature of reality, but also our place within it. Franz Kafka's writing often reads like a haunting philosophical inquiry, where existentialism, pessimism, and metaphysical questions collide in surreal scenarios. Influenced by thinkers such as Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, Kierkegaard, Kafka used fiction to explore the themes that plagued his own mind: alienation, authority, and the nature of suffering. Each of these philosophers engage with the fundamental struggles of existence. Through characters who grapple with incomprehensible systems, Kafka invites readers to question their sense of control and place within the vast machinery of modern life. Does Kafka believe in humanity's capacity to shape its own destiny, or does he offer a stark warning about the limits of human agency? With these questions in mind, let's look at how Kafka's world reflects and transforms these philosophical ideas. Kafka's novel, The Trial, captures existential concerns vividly, presenting a protagonist trapped within an absurd bureaucratic nightmare. But was Kafka merely expressing his own despair, or was he attempting to reveal something profound about the universal human condition and our struggle against unseen forces? Friedrich Nietzsche famously proposed the concept of the will to power, a driving force that he believed underpins human striving. For Nietzsche, life is not passive. It is an active struggle to assert values, meaning, and identity in a chaotic world. This idea of self-assertion through strength, ambition, and resilience is central to Nietzsche's philosophy. But Kafka, it seems, had a different view. In The Trial, Kafka introduces Joseph K., a character who exemplifies the antithesis of Nietzsche's ideal. The novel begins with a disconcerting premise. Joseph K., a successful banker, is arrested in his own apartment without being told what crime he has committed. Two warders arrive unannounced and declare him guilty, setting off his descent into a surreal legal system that defies rational explanation. From the start, Kafka immerses readers in the absurd as Joseph K. tries to make sense of his situation. Neighbors watch with detached curiosity as he faces humiliation and arrest, hinting that this trial is less judicial and more existential. Here, Kafka strips Joseph K. of any agency, leaving him bewildered within a legal system that offers no answers or clear paths to justice. Though he is not physically imprisoned, he becomes mentally shackled by the invisible constraints of this bizarre legal system. In The Trial, Kafka constructs a universe where authority is omnipresent yet unknowable, embodied not by specific villains, but by an opaque system that no one fully understands. As K navigates this legal world, he encounters low-ranking officials, elusive judges, and obscure courtrooms in unexpected places such as attics or dilapidated offices. This disorienting environment serves as a metaphor for modern bureaucracy's capacity to dehumanize individuals, reducing them to case numbers. The legal system in the trial lacks transparency, humanity, and accountability, making it impossible for K to advocate for himself or understand the accusations against him. Authority here lacks a moral code. It is a faceless structure that thrives on ambiguity and feeds on the individual's powerlessness. Institutions intended to provide order and justice instead become sources of chaos, anxiety, and despair. For Joseph K., every interaction within this system is an exercise in futility. The officials he meets appear either ignorant or apathetic, unwilling or unable to offer meaningful help. This absurdity underscores Kafka's critique of modern society. As human beings become more entangled in bureaucratic systems, individual agency is lost, consumed by structures once created to serve people, but now existing as autonomous entities with their own agendas. As the story unfolds, Joseph K. seeks understanding within a legal system that proves elusive and nonsensical. He encounters indifferent officials, meaningless procedures, and courtrooms hidden in obscure places. These surreal settings embody the Kafkaesque world, where power exists without accountability, and each interaction is an exercise in futility. Unlike Nietzsche's hero, who overcomes obstacles through sheer will, Joseph K. is confined within a structure that denies him any influence over his fate. His lack of control over his circumstances makes him a character defined not by his actions but by his helpless endurance. Kafka wrote, "I am not well. I could have built the pyramids with the effort it takes me to cling on to life and reason." Kafka suggests that, as individuals become enmeshed in bureaucratic structures, they are reduced to mere cogs in a machine that neither respects their humanity nor values their individuality. Here, Kafka raises a critical question. Is the will to power even possible in a world where the individual's voice is drowned out by the din of bureaucracy? Instead of responding to his predicament with Nietzschean resolve, Joseph K. remains trapped in a labyrinthine bureaucracy, unable to shape his destiny or comprehend his situation. The existential weight of K's journey forces readers to confront their own vulnerability within societal structures. Can any of us truly claim innocence, or are we all perpetually guilty of something unknown? Søren Kierkegaard, often considered the father of existentialism, argued that personal choice and responsibility are central to creating meaning in an inherently purposeless world. He believed individuals must seek authenticity through their decisions, shaping identity from within. But Kafka in the Metamorphosis challenges this idea by presenting a protagonist who is stripped of both autonomy and identity. Kafka's world diverges sharply from Kierkegaard's view of the individual. Rather than finding freedom through choice, Gregor's Metamorphosis thrusts him into a reality where identity and agency are defined entirely by external expectations. In a society that equates value with utility, Kafka presents a darkly ironic scenario where Gregor's humanity diminishes as he loses his economic function. Kafka seems to ask, can we ever truly shape our identities if society defines us solely by what we contribute? Through Gregor's story, Kafka reveals the fragility of selfhood under social expectations. The tragedy in the Metamorphosis is that Gregor's transformation into an insect does more than alter his physical form. It annihilates his individuality, leaving him a mere shell of his former self. Kafka's characters, it seems, are not on a journey toward existential freedom, but rather are trapped in worlds that strip them of both identity and agency. His message is unsettling. In a world that limits our capacity for choice, our very existence becomes Kafkaesque. One morning, Gregor Samsa awakes from troubled dreams to find himself transformed into a massive, repulsive insect. This unsettling image opens the Metamorphosis, linked to must-read Kafka novel in the description, a novella that delves into the experience of alienation, the loss of identity, and the dehumanizing effects of society's emphasis on economic productivity. Gregor's transformation into a creature is a physical manifestation of his growing sense of disconnect from his family, his former identity, and a society that equates value with usefulness. This surreal story raises a fundamental question. Is our worth only as strong as our usefulness to others? It's a metaphor for the alienation that arises when personal identity is tied solely to economic productivity. Once an active provider for his family, Gregor's new insect form renders him incapable of work. He becomes a burden, an other, within his own home. His family's gradual rejection, shifting from sympathy to revulsion, leaves Gregor trapped in his room, increasingly isolated and despised. By the end, he is entirely estranged from the life and family he once knew. Unlike Kierkegaard's vision of the individual as a self-creating agent, Kafka presents a world where Gregor's essence is dictated by external forces, his value measured solely by his economic productivity and utility. His metamorphosis is not merely physical, it is a profound disintegration of the self, reducing him to a mere shadow of his former being. Kafka's narrative invites us to reflect on Kierkegaard's ideas of anxiety and choice. What happens when the freedom to choose is stripped away? Gregor's plight reveals the existential terror of being othered in a world that demands utility, challenging the very foundation of human connection. In this bleak tableau, Kafka echoes Kierkegaard's warning. The pursuit of authenticity in a society that commodifies existence can lead to despair. The metamorphosis serves as a haunting exploration of identity and the seductive yet perilous nature of societal expectations. Kafka seems to ask, can we ever truly shape our identities if society defines us solely by what we contribute? His question is unsettling. In a system that limits our capacity for choice, our very existence becomes Kafkaesque. Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher known for his bleak outlook on life, posited that human existence is defined by an endless cycle of desire and suffering. According to Schopenhauer, true peace can only be achieved by renouncing one's desires altogether. Kafka's characters often reflect this vision of life's inherent futility, encountering situations where effort leads only to failure and ambition is thwarted by forces beyond their control. In The Metamorphosis, Gregor's transformation renders his ambitions and identity irrelevant. His life, devoid of agency and purpose, reflects Schopenhauer's view that human desires ultimately lead to suffering. Gregor's gradual resignation to his fate, culminating in his death, echoes Schopenhauer's belief that freedom lies in surrender rather than achievement. Similarly, in the trial, Joseph K. strives to prove his innocence, only to find himself trapped in an endless cycle of disappointment and frustration. Despite his determination to navigate the legal labyrinth, he ultimately succumbs to forces he cannot control. Kafka's portrayal of Joseph K.'s futile efforts mirrors Schopenhauer's notion that the pursuit of meaning often ends in disillusionment. For Kafka, the quest for understanding is a Sisyphean task, one that reveals the inescapable futility of human endeavor. Through these characters, Kafka explores a world in which striving leads only to despair, a reflection of Schopenhauer's philosophy of pessimism. In Kafka's stories, surrender is not a path to peace, but an inevitable outcome of confronting life's absurdity. Kafka seems to ask, is resignation the only answer to an indifferent universe? Or does human dignity lie in our persistence, even if success is impossible? Kafka's world, then, is one in which the human spirit is constantly tested by unyielding systems and meaningless suffering. His characters are defined not by triumph, but by their ability to endure, a theme that resonates deeply with Schopenhauer's view of life's intrinsic pain. Yet Kafka's stories also suggest a certain resilience in the face of futility, an idea that complicates Schopenhauer's philosophy and leaves readers questioning the value of persistence. Albert Camus, a philosopher closely associated with existentialism, introduced the concept of the absurd as the tension between humanity's desire for meaning and the universe's indifference. Camus argued that once individuals confront this absurdity, they have three choices: deny it, surrender to despair, or embrace it with rebellious acceptance. Kafka's characters, however, seem perpetually on the brink of this realization, caught in cycles of striving without the liberation of full acceptance. Joseph K. in the trial exemplifies the Kafkaesque figure who searches for justice and understanding in a world that offers none. Unlike Camus' absurd hero, who defiantly accepts his plight, Joseph K. clings to the hope that he will find a reason for his persecution. Kafka's portrayal of Joseph K.'s actions highlights the futility of seeking clarity in a world that refuses to be understood. Kafka seems to be asking, can one ever find meaning within systems that are inherently indifferent? Camus' idea of rebellion as a response to absurdity contrasts sharply with Kafka's portrayal of characters who are too overwhelmed to resist. Gregor Samsa, upon his transformation, doesn't rebel against his new reality, but rather resigns himself to it, unable to find freedom or meaning. Kafka presents the absurd not as a challenge to overcome, but as an inescapable reality that resists any attempt at acceptance. It's as if Kafka is asking whether rebellion is even possible when the absurdity is so all-encompassing. Where Camus sees defiance as a path to personal freedom, Kafka's narratives often close this door, leaving his characters trapped in silent endurance. Camus might see Kafka's world as one in which characters search for meaning without acknowledging the futility of their quests, recognizing the absurdity of existence yet unable to rebel against it. This distinction reveals a deeper dimension. Where Camus offers rebellion, Kafka offers resignation. Yet both authors compel us to confront the void, albeit with different attitudes toward the possibility of liberation. By juxtaposing Kafka with Camus, we see Kafka's characters as perhaps too overwhelmed by the absurdity of their existence to resist it, painting a world where the only option left might be to endure in silence. Through this contrast, Gregor's story becomes a reflection on life's absurdities without the consolation of resistance. Kafka's message is sobering. Sometimes the only response to the absurdity of existence is to endure. He wrote, "I usually solve problems by letting them devour me." As we come to the end of our exploration, Kafka's own journey looms large. His recently revealed diaries, along with stories like A Hunger Artist and The Burrow, reveal an author who had come to know suffering intimately. These late works are stark, stripped of embellishment, shadowed by illness, and edged with a dark humor that confronts life's emptiness more directly than ever before. In these stories, Kafka does not just depict the absurd, he seems to live within it. The vibrancy of his earlier writing dims, replaced by brief, quiet expressions. A few words scrawled on scraps of paper as he struggled to communicate through the physical and mental toll of tuberculosis. What does it mean to write when words, once symbols of agency, now seem as fragile and fleeting as breath itself? It was as though the shame was meant to outlive him, reads the last sentence of the trial. Joseph K's fate resonates far beyond tragedy. It touches on a deeper, universal shame, the shame of being human. As Joseph K confronts his fate in a world devoid of control, we're reminded of lives caught within forces beyond comprehension, such as the innocent children affected by the Gaza war. Their existence is shadowed by unimaginable loss and disorientation, echoing Kafka's own themes of isolation and existential sorrow. And so, the trial closes not only with Joseph K's death, described degradingly, like a dog, but with a final haunting question suspended in silence. When faced with forces we cannot understand, can we still hold on our humanity? Thank you.